this. Great to be here with you guys. Starting chapter 19, the attainment of peace. So let me share my screen and I will read this. All right. The attainment of peace, healing, and faith. We said before that when a situation has been dedicated wholly to truth, peace is inevitable. Its attainment is the criterion by which the wholeness of the dedication can be safely assumed. Yet we also said that peace without faith will never be attained. For what is dedicated to truth as its only goal is brought to truth by faith. This faith encompasses everyone involved, for only thus the situation is perceived as meaningful and as whole. And everyone must be involved in it, or else your faith is limited and your dedication incomplete. Every situation properly perceived becomes an opportunity to heal the Son of God. And he is healed because you offered faith to him, giving him to the Holy Spirit, and releasing him from every demand your ego would make of him. Thus do you see him free. In this vision, does the Holy Spirit share? And since he shares it, he has given it, and so he heals through you. It is this joining him in a united purpose that makes this purpose real, because you make it whole. And this is healing. The body is healed because you came without it and joined the mind in which all healing rests. The body cannot heal because it cannot make itself sick. It needs no healing. Its health or sickness depends entirely on how the mind perceives it and the purpose that the mind would use it for. It is obvious that a segment of the mind can see itself as separated from the universal purpose. When this occurs, the body becomes its weapon, used against this purpose to demonstrate the fact that separation has occurred. The body thus becomes the instrument of illusion, acting accordingly, seeing what is not there, hearing what truth has never said, and behaving insanely, being imprisoned by insanity. Do not overlook our earlier statement that faithlessness leads straight to illusions. For faithlessness is the perception of a brother as a body, and the body cannot be used for purposes of union. If then you see your brother as a body, you have established a condition in which uniting with him becomes impossible. Your faithlessness to him has separated you from him and kept you both apart from being healed. Your faithlessness has thus opposed the Holy Spirit's purpose and brought illusions centered on the body to stand between you. And the body will seem to be sick, for you have made of it an enemy of healing and the opposite of truth. It cannot be difficult to realize that faith must be the opposite of faithlessness. Yet the difference in how they operate is less apparent, though it follows directly from the fundamental difference in what they are. Faithlessness would always limit and attack. Faith would remove all limitations and make whole. Faithlessness would destroy and separate. Faith would unite and heal. Faithlessness would interpose illusions between the Son of God and his Creator. Faith would remove all obstacles that seem to rise between them. Faithlessness is wholly dedicated to illusions. Faith, wholly to truth. Partial dedication is impossible. Truth is the absence of illusion. Illusion, the absence of truth. Both cannot be together nor perceived in the same place. To dedicate yourself to both is to set up a goal forever impossible to attain. For part of it is sought through the body, thought of as a means for seeking out reality through attack. The other part would heal, and therefore calls upon the mind and not the body. The inevitable compromise is the belief that the body must be healed and not the mind. For this divided goal has given both an equal reality, which could be possible only if the mind is limited to the body and divided into little parts of seeming wholeness, but without connection. This will not harm the body, but it will keep the delusional thought system in the mind. Here, then, is healing needed. And it is here that healing is. For God gave healing not apart from sickness, nor established remedy where sickness cannot be. They are together. And when they are seen together, all attempts to keep both truth and illusion in the mind, where both must be, are recognized as dedication to illusion and given up when brought to truth and seen as totally unreconcilable with truth in any respect or in any way. Truth and illusion have no connection. This will remain forever true, however much you seek to connect them. But illusions are always connected, as is truth. Each is united, a complete thought system, but totally disconnected to each other. And to perceive this is to recognize where separation is and where it must be healed. The result of an idea is never separate from its source. The idea of separation produced the body and remains connected to it, making it sick because of the mind's identification with it. You think you are protecting the body by hiding this connection, for this concealment seems to keep your identification safe from the attack of truth. If you but understood how much this strange concealment has hurt your mind and how confused your own identification has become because of it, you do not see how great the devastation wrought by your faithlessness. For faithlessness is an attack that seems to be justified by its results. For by withholding faith, you see what is unworthy of it and cannot look beyond the barrier to what is joined with you. To have faith is to heal. It is the sign that you have accepted the at-one-ment for yourself and would therefore share it. By faith, you offer the gift of freedom from the past, which you received. You do not use anything your brother has done before to condemn him now. You freely choose to overlook his errors, looking past all barriers between yourself and him, and seeing them as one. And in that one, you see your faith is fully justified. There is no justification for faithlessness, but faith is always justified. Faith is the opposite of fear, as much a part of love as fear is of attack. Faith is the acknowledgement of union. It is the gracious acknowledgement of everyone as a son of your most loving Father, loved by him like you, and therefore loved by you as yourself. It is his love that joins you and your brother, and for his love, you would keep no one separate from yours. Each one appears just as he is perceived in the holy instant, united in your purpose to be released from guilt. You see the Christ in him, and he is healed because you look on what makes faith forever justified in everyone. Faith is the gift of God through him whom God has given you. Faithlessness looks upon the Son of God and judges him unworthy of forgiveness. But through the eyes of faith, the Son of God is seen already forgiven, free of all the guilt he laid upon himself. Faith sees him only now because it looks not to the past to judge him, but would see in him only what it would see in you. It sees not through the body's eyes, nor looks to bodies for its justification. It is the messenger of the new perception, sent forth to gather witnesses unto its coming, and to return their messages to you. Faith is as easily exchanged for knowledge as is the real world. For faith arises from the Holy Spirit's perception and is the sign you share it with him. Faith is a gift you offer to the Son of God through him, and wholly acceptable to his Father as to him, and therefore offered you. Your holy relationship with its new purpose offers you faith to give unto your brother. Your faithlessness has driven you and him apart, and so you do not recognize salvation in him. Yet faith unites you in the holiness you see, not through the body's eyes, but in the sight of him who joined you, and in whom you are united. Grace is not given to a body, but to a mind, and the mind that receives it looks instantly beyond the body and sees the holy place where it was healed. There is the altar where the grace was given, in which it stands. Do you then offer grace and blessing to your brother? For you stand at the same altar where grace was laid for both of you. And be you healed by grace together, that you may heal through faith. In the holy instant, you and your brother stand before the altar God has raised unto himself and both of you. Lay faithlessness aside and come to it together. There you will see the miracle of your relationship as it was made again through faith. And there it is that you will realize that there is nothing faith cannot forgive. No error interferes with its calm sight, which brings the miracle of healing with equal ease to all of them. For what the messengers of love are sent to do, they do, returning the glad tidings that it was done to you and your brother, who stand together before the altar from which they were sent forth. As faithlessness will keep your little kingdoms barren and separate, so will faith help the Holy Spirit prepare the ground for the most holy garden that he would make of it. For faith brings peace, and so it calls on truth to enter and make lovely what has already been prepared for loveliness. Truth follows faith and peace, completing the process of making lovely that they begin. For faith is still a learning goal, no longer needed when the lesson has been learned, yet truth will stay forever. Let then your dedication be to the eternal, and learn how not to interfere with it and make it slave to time. For what you think you do to the eternal, you do to you. Whom God created as his son is slave to nothing, being Lord of all, along with his creator. You can enslave a body, but an idea is free, incapable of being kept in prison or limited in any way, except by the mind that thought it, for it remains joined to its source, which is its jailer or its liberator, according to which it chooses as its purpose for itself. No, that was interesting and good and redundant. We've read that many times, but it's like we have to hear it again. I'm going through something right now with our ex-building superintendent because of all the stuff that happened at the house. And you're in the mind wants to condemn him, right? To say he did all these bad things on purpose and he pulled trades off my house and sent them to other houses and made us close late, which was all things he did. But then, according to A Course in Miracles, you have to have faith and see him as the Son of God, perfect and loving and all of these things. So it's a challenge to continue to see your brother, especially the ones that you're like, ooh.
You're Buddhist.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Anybody have any thoughts or comments? Did this bring up any ideas? Maybe things that are going on in your life where you're seeing someone as a body and not as a son of God?
It's not someone, but my body, having been setting and drawing for 4 months, now back up on my feet for 12, 14 hours a day. It's letting me know that it exists.
That it's not an illusion.
No, it's not an illusion. It is, but the the pain and the aching and that kind of stuff. It's really difficult to see it as just in the beginning, like at this third paragraph, it was talking about it's health and sickness depends entirely on how the mind perceives it. Last year I was using alcohol to go to sleep at night because of all the pain and everything, and I haven't drank this year yet. So it's finding a new way to deal with the stress and the pain and everything is more along the lines of the Course in Miracles, which is very apparent in this teaching. It's quite good. But it's getting better. It'll take me a month.
Yeah.
I'll be back at.
Buddy, getting used to moving, getting used to standing for long hours.
Mhm.
Is there any yoga place that you can take like a yin yoga class?
I do my own, and
Yeah.
and that's not the thing. It's doing yoga is great for certain muscle groups and certain places and that, but standing in the same place, chopping and
Right.
sauteing and in the heat and in the cold too, going from the walk-ins to the line and all that kind of thing. It's a totally different thing than doing yoga in your
Right.
living room.
Sure,
It doesn't work the same way.
Yeah.
And the muscles that you don't use, the big muscles that in your back and in your legs, they like the yoga. And that's not the problem. That the yoga muscles are going, yay, this is fine. But it's the big muscles that I don't use in yoga.
Yeah.
Like I don't do weightlifting, and I should do cycling for my legs, but I haven't been doing that, and that's something I have to reinvest in next winter.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's little things that you can do to help you by.
It's called ibuprofen.
They say that you can actually engage your core doing anything, even doing dishes.
Yeah.
So while you're sitting there cooking, try to engage your core by just concentrating on it and tucking it in, like belly button in like that, and take your focus off everything else. And then slightly bend your knees when you're standing for too long, just slightly giving them a little bend. All these little tricks may help.
Well, engaging my core is something that I've done most of my life while I'm drawing, while I'm setting, is I engage my core. And it's not really my core, it's my upper middle back and my legs. That engaging them doesn't seem to work as well as the core does. Because but yeah, the bending, I know that I have a place where I have a mat, and I have a place where I can bring one leg up at different points, but it's just getting used to it. And like I said, it'll take me a month of doing this, but it's the first couple of weeks that are really telling.
Right.
I'm old. This is my 50th year being a cook.
Wow, it's a long time, Carl. Good for you.
Well,
I'm having a problem with my Wi-Fi. It's freezing up on me.
Yeah, we noticed you're frozen there for a minute.
the speech is still there though. We can still hear you.
Oh, did you hear me mumbling to myself?
No, we didn't hear that
I
part.
wasn't saying good, because I wasn't saying very nice things.
Has this hit anybody else? Is anybody else experiencing something that they want to share that has to do with faith versus faithlessness and grace and at one minute?
I was reading something Don Miguel was writing about faith, and he said that our faith is so strong that when we focus on the pain, that's what we get.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so the opposite is also true.
Just like sickness. Same thing with
He
sickness.
gave a few examples. I can't remember, but I mean, it sounded very convincing that we don't realize how faith is so strong in every one of us. It's probably, he says, one of the strongest things that we have.
It makes sense. That makes sense.
The good things.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I'm sorry. I don't know when I'm frozen or not anymore.
No, we could hear you. You were frozen, but we could hear you that time.
Yeah, so I think focusing on the little things, of if you're experiencing pain, try to say that, well, and it's all building muscle also. If you haven't done it in a while, standing for a long time, I mean, it can definitely be hard on the joints, everything.
No, but what's funny is because when I'm in the moment at work, it doesn't bother me so much because my mind is focused on my work or on the people or on what's going on. And that's not when it bothers me. It bothers me when I stop, when I'm not focused on other things, when my mind or my spirit or whatever you want to say is focused on the task or being in the moment. The pain isn't there. It's when I'm doing my meditations at the end of the night, when I'm calm, that's when it pops up. And so I need to find a way to focus on my meditation or my spirit or however you want to put it in the same intenseness as I do at work, and then it wouldn't bother me at all. And that's where a lot of the focus comes from. And that's what the course talks about, is that it's where our mind is at, what our focus is. And if I let my external body take control, then I'll feel that pain. But if my heart is in the right place, then it wouldn't be feeling that pain.
Very good, Carl. That's exactly right. Good point. Thank you for sharing that. It's so helpful when you share what's happening in your world, because it helps other people to kind of imagine that and say, yeah, I think I can understand that. And maybe I'm doing that too in other areas of my life. So we keep going, sin versus error. Sure. All right, sin versus error. It is essential that error be not confused with sin, and it is this distinction that makes salvation possible. For error can be corrected and the wrong made right, but sin, were it possible, would be irreversible. The belief in sin is necessarily based on the firm conviction that minds, not bodies, can attack. And thus the mind is guilty and will forever so remain, unless a mind not part of it can give it absolution. Sin calls for punishment as error for correction, and the belief that punishment is correction is clearly insane. Sin is not an error, for sin entails an arrogance, which the idea of error lacks. To sin would be to violate reality and to succeed. Sin is the proclamation that attack is real and guilt is justified. It assumes the Son of God is guilty and has thus succeeded in losing his innocence and making himself what God created not. Thus is creation seen as not eternal, and the will of God open to opposition and defeat. Sin is the grand illusion underlying all the ego's grandiosity, for by it, God himself is changed and rendered incomplete. The Son of God can be mistaken. He can deceive himself. He can even turn the power of his mind against himself. But he cannot sin. There is nothing he can do that would really change his reality in any way, nor make him really guilty. That is what sin would do, for such is its purpose. Yet for all the wild insanity inherent in the whole idea of sin, it is impossible. For the wages of sin is death. And how can the immortal die? A major tenet in the ego's insane religion is that sin is not error, but truth, and it is innocence that would deceive. Purity is seen as arrogance, and the acceptance of the self as sinful is perceived as holiness. And it is this doctrine that replaces the reality of the Son of God as his Father created him and willed that he be forever. Is this humility? Or is it rather an attempt to wrest creation away from truth and keep it separate? Any attempt to reinterpret sin as error is always indefensible to the ego. The idea of sin is wholly sacrosanct to its thought system and quite unapproachable, except with reverence and awe. It is the most holy concept in the ego's system, lovely and powerful, wholly true, and necessarily protected with every defense at its disposal. For here lies its best defense, which all the others serve. Here is its armor, its protection, and the fundamental purpose of the special relationship in its interpretation. It can indeed be said the ego made its world on sin. Only in such a world could everything be upside down. This is the strange illusion that makes the clouds of guilt seem heavy and impenetrable. The solidness that this world's foundation seems to have is found in this. For sin has changed creation from an idea of God to an ideal the ego wants, a world it rules, made up of bodies, mindless and capable of complete corruption and decay. If this is a mistake, it can be undone easily by truth. Any mistake can be corrected if truth be left to judge it. But if the mistake is given the status of truth, to what can it be brought? The holiness of sin is kept in place by just this strange device. As truth is inviolate and everything is brought to it for judgment, as a mistake, it must be brought to truth. It is possible to have faith in sin, it is impossible to have faith in sin, for sin is faithlessness. Yet it is possible to have faith that a mistake can be corrected. There is no stone in all the ego's embattled citadel that is more heavily defended than the idea that sin is real, the natural expression of what the Son of God has made himself to be and what he is. To the ego, this is no mistake, for this is its reality. This is the truth from which escape will always be impossible. This is his past, his present, and his future, for he has somehow managed to corrupt his father and change his mind completely. Mourn then the death of God, whom sin has killed. And this would be the ego's wish, which in its madness, it believes it has accomplished. Would you not rather that all this be nothing more than a mistake, entirely correctable and so easily escaped from that its whole correction is like walking through a mist into the sun? For that is all it is. Perhaps you would be tempted to agree with the ego that is far better to be sinful than mistaken. Yet think you carefully before you allow yourself to make this choice. Approach it not lightly, for it is the choice of hell or heaven. Dun, dun, dun.
God, sounds like the news media these days.
I know, right? So ominous. The choice between hell or heaven, if you believe in sin or if you just see it as a mistake. Right?
But this last paragraph, would you rather that all this be nothing more than a mistake? That's what I've been feeling for the last 6 years. You know, I'd
And
rather
it
just
is,
say
right?
this is a mistake. You know, this is something's wrong. Well, what's going to happen to fix this?
And you know, the crazy part about that, Carl, is the only thing that needs to happen is your thought about it. We always think everybody else has to change it to make it a difference, right? But it's really just our thoughts, our mind just has to change and see everything as a mistake. It's just a mistake, easily forgiven. Because how can the eternal be condemned, right?
Mhm. Makes it very difficult. Mm.
Simple, but not easy, right? But I think once you practice, it gets easier. Practice seeing it all as a mistake, one by one. Every little thought that enters your mind, just a mistake, just a mistake, just a mistake. And then pretty soon it just comes naturally. Oh, that's a mistake, and that's a mistake, and that's a mistake. Anybody else have any?
I guess it's the guy in me, but I would always look for a way to fix the mistakes. And it feels so hopeless most of the time.
And the only thing that needs to be fixed is your idea about it. Because everything else is just part of the illusion. Speaking of which, let's continue with the unreality of sin. And maybe we will get more direction and more answers. The attraction of guilt is found in sin, not error. Sin will be repeated because of this attraction. Fear can become so acute that the sin is denied the acting out. But while the guilt remains attractive, the mind will suffer and not let go of the idea of sin. For guilt still calls to it, and the mind hears it and yearns for it, making itself a willing captive to its sick appeal. Sin is an idea of evil that cannot be corrected, and yet will be forever desirable. As an essential part of what the ego thinks you are, you will always want it. And only an avenger with a mind unlike your own could stamp it out through fear. The ego does not think it possible that love, not fear, is really called upon by sin and always answers. For the ego brings sin to fear, demanding punishment. Yet punishment is but another form of guilt's protection. For what is deserving punishment must have been really done. Punishment is always the great preserver of sin, treating it with respect and honoring its enormity. What must be punished must be true, and what is true must be eternal and will be repeated endlessly. For what you think is real, you want and will not let it go. An error, on the other hand, is not attractive. What you see clearly as mistake, you want corrected. Sometimes a sin can be repeated over and over with obviously distressing results, but without the loss of its appeal. And suddenly you change its status from sin to a mistake, and now you will not repeat it. You will merely stop and let it go, unless the guilt remains. For then you will but change the form of sin, granting that it was an error, but keeping it uncorrectable. This is not really a change in your perception, for it is sin that calls for punishment, not error. The Holy Spirit cannot punish sin. Mistakes he recognizes and would correct them all as God entrusted him to do. But sin, he knows not, nor can he recognize mistakes that cannot be corrected. For a mistake that cannot be corrected is meaningless to him. Mistakes are for correction. and they call for nothing else. What calls for punishment must call for nothing. Every mistake must be a call for love. What then is sin? What could it be but a mistake you would keep hidden, a call for help that you would keep unheard and thus unanswered? In time, the Holy Spirit clearly sees the Son of God can make mistakes. On this, you share his vision, yet you do not share his recognition of the difference between time and eternity. And when correction is completed, time is eternity. The Holy Spirit can teach you how to look on time differently and see beyond it, but not while you believe in sin. In error, yes, this can be corrected by the mind. But sin is the belief that your perception is unchangeable and that the mind must accept as true what it is told through it. And if it does not obey, the mind is judged insane. The only power that could change perception is thus kept impotent, held to the body by fear of changed perception, which its teacher, who is one with it, would bring. When you are tempted to believe that sin is real, remember this: if sin is real, both God and you are not. If creation is extension, the Creator must have extended himself, and it is impossible that what is part of him is totally unlike the rest. If sin is real, God must be at war with himself. He must be split and torn between good and evil, partly sane and partially insane. For he must have created what wills to destroy him and has the power to do so. Is it not easier to believe that you have been mistaken than to believe this? While you believe that your reality or your brother's is bounded by a body, you will believe in sin. While you believe that bodies can unite, you will find guilt attractive and believe that sin is precious. For the belief that bodies limit mind leads to a perception of the world in which the proof of separation seems to be everywhere. And God and his creation seem to be split apart and overthrown. For sin would prove what God created holy could not prevail against it, nor remain itself before the power of sin. Sin is perceived as mightier than God, before which God himself must bow and offer his creation to its conqueror. Is this humility or madness? If sin is real, it must forever be beyond the hope of healing, for there would be a power beyond God's capable of making another will that could attack his will and overcome it, and give his son a will apart from his, and stronger. And each part of God's fragmented creation would have a different will opposed to his, and in eternal opposition to him and to each other. Your holy relationship has, as its purpose now, the goal of proving this is impossible. Heaven has smiled upon it, and the belief in sin has been uprooted in its smile of love. You see it still, because you do not realize that its foundation has gone. Its source has been removed, and so it can be cherished but a little while before it vanishes. Only the habit of looking for it still remains. And yet you will, and yet you look with heaven's smile upon your lips and heaven's blessings on your sight. You will not see sin long. For in this new perception, the mind corrects it when it seems to be seen, and it becomes invisible. Errors are quickly recognized and quickly given to correction, to be healed, not hidden. You will be healed of sin and all its ravages the instant that you give it no power over your brother. And you will help him overcome mistakes by joyously releasing him from the belief in sin. In the holy instant, you will see the smile of heaven shining on both you and your brother, and you will shine upon him in glad acknowledgement of the grace that has been given you. For sin will not prevail against a union heaven has smiled upon. Your perception was healed in the holy instant heaven gave you. Forget what you have seen and raise your eyes in faith to what you now can see. The barriers to heaven will disappear before your holy sight. For you who were sightless have been given vision, and you can see. Look not for what has been removed, but for the glory that has been restored for you to see. Look upon your Redeemer and behold what he would show you in your brother. And let not sin rise again to blind your eyes, for sin would keep you separate from him. But your Redeemer would have you look upon your brother as yourself. Your relationship is now a temple of healing, a place where all the weary ones can come and rest. Here is the rest that waits for all after the journey, and it is brought nearer to all by your relationship. Okay, we have our work cut out for us. Time to look upon our brother as sinless. Any thoughts, any comments, any questions? I know I've got my work cut out for me. Building a house gives you lots of opportunity. Probably doing just about anything.
Life.
Being in and out of a pandemic, or the illusion of a pandemic, or whatever it is, right? Not that I'm saying anything on either side of the discussion, but it's just part of this whole world that we live in, right? This world of illusions. A big playground to practice being love every day in every situation. Practice choosing love every day in every situation, again and again and again. 100 different ways with the 60,000 thoughts we have every single day. 60,000 thoughts a day, that's a lot. That's approximate. So some have more, some have less, depending on the day, depending on how late you're staying up, depending on how many times you wake up in the middle of the night, think more thoughts. Well, we could start the next section, which is the obstacles to peace, but it's broken down into parts. So I'm a little hesitant because I think they like all build on each other. There's like A and B and I and
Oh, it goes D. Yeah, it's a big one.
it's a big one. Yeah.
Goes all the way to 424.
Oh, that is a big one. It might have to be broken up in pieces anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess the goal is, right, to practice seeing situations, circumstances, people, all as mistakes and not sin. And trying to bring that vision of your brother or the situation into a place of love and forgiveness and union, right, at one mint.
People.
Any other thoughts or questions or comments?
Yeah, this part of dealing with our guilt, guilt that has been imposed upon us or put on us, and then
Right.
instead of us breaking the cycle, we continue the guilt moving on. To know, and what this says is to know that that's not really true.
Right.
That if somebody is trying to put some guilt on you because something you didn't do or did do, it's the same. It's an illusion. And what I mean by that is, I take the example of Maya Angelou, how she lost her ability to speak because she told on the abuser that abused her, and they killed him. He was killed.
Mm.
And yet, on the flip side of that, if you don't tell and you tell later on in life, and they tell you, well, why didn't you tell me then? Again, there's guilt being put on you. It's one of those, the guilt has so many ways to get at you
Right.
that none of it is true.
Right. Right.
So you're kind of like wondering, okay, so if you do tell, and then there's an outcome that is not good, now you're living with that guilt. You cause somebody death. So the point I guess I'm trying to make is that it's all the same. I don't know if you saw The Lion King, whether his uncle says to him, "You're guilty. You caused your father to die."
Yes.
It's a perfect example of that, and how he
Right.
runs away because he can't face.
Yeah, I think I understand the point you're trying to make, and you froze again. But yeah, if you can, whenever you're seeing someone as guilty, or whenever someone is accusing you of doing something and, telling you that you're guilty of it, it calls for the same thing, right? All attack is merely a call for love. And if you're ready to point a finger and attack and blame, then maybe stop for a minute and give it to the Holy Spirit, right? Because you've already aligned with fear, which is what we were talking about before. When you see someone as sin calls for fear. And fear is anger, resentment, jealousy, all of those things that are associated with fear and not love. So if we can stop in a moment and ask for help from the Holy Spirit, right, which is the bridge to the one mind of God, or source, or the universe, whatever you want to call it, call on love and let love answer. Because when we're already aligned with fear, we're not going to answer from a place of love. But we forget that the Holy Spirit is there to help us. We forget that we are connected to that one mind of God by that umbilical cord of energetic whatever, right? That we don't have to see it as God as something outside of ourselves, or the Holy Spirit is something outside of ourselves. We can just see it as a bridge, a connection to that one mind of God that we have access to anytime, but we have to remember to call on it, right? Because when we're in that place of fear, someone's attacked us, right? We're already aligned with fear. Then we just have to say, I let go, I let God. And then maybe our mind can align with love and see it differently. But we have to let go of the fear first. We have to detach from that fear first by remembering that we are never alone, that we are always connected, that there's always a bridge, and there's always a way to connect if we just remember for a minute, for a second. Because our mind is not going to come up with a loving answer if we've already aligned with fear, which is usually the case. So it's that let go, let God. That lesson 365, this holy instant, what I give to you, be you in charge. I will follow you, certain that your direction will bring me peace. And let it go. Let it go. Until the answer comes. And it will come with a resounding boom, and it'll give you this sense of peace and weightlessness that you've been wanting and you've been longing for. It'll feel like the weight of the world has lifted off your shoulders, because you don't have to do it. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to solve it. It's not yours to fix or solve or do. It's just yours to let go of and connect, right, to the one mind that has the answers. Why would you worry yourself to try to figure it out and come up with the right answer when you don't have to, when you don't have it anyway, right? Because we're usually aligned with fear and the ego. We don't have the answer. We don't have the right answer anyway. We've got the answer based on fear, which is just aligning with the ego. So let go and let the answer come through you. Be that vessel so that you can act in that place of love and service. Easy, not easy, simple, but not always easy, right? Simple, if we can remember. Simple, if we can remember to call on the answer. Any other thoughts or comments, shares?
I feel like for myself, especially since I've gone through the personal development journey, started it, I guess, I would praise myself at being able to see other people a lot easier in the brotherly light. But I know for sure that my bigger struggle is self-compassion and knowing better, especially with the course and starting to understand, all of this stuff. Like, if something tough happens, it's probably a lesson that I need to learn. I need to slow down and figure out what's going on. I didn't deserve necessarily what happened, but I attracted it for whatever reason, whether it was in my soul contract before I got here or the circumstances where I find myself in my current reality. But knowing that I have the tools and the capability to construct this reality is one thing. I just I think that the overwhelm for me comes in. I don't know if it's like picking yourself up when you have felt like you made the mistake or should have known better to make the mistake or get back on track to doing better. But that's what I feel like overwhelms me more, is myself and my skill set and the internal dialogue. It's almost subconscious. Like, I know better to talk to myself the way that I used to. I know better than to have those thoughts, but it's almost like it's ingrained so deeply that I'm not sure how to get back to a place I don't even know if I've ever been, to be honest.
I completely relate with what you're saying, Rachel, and I've been there so many times. I mean, I've been doing A Course in Miracles for 30 years. I've been facilitating A Course in Miracles study groups for over 25 years. And in the course of that, there's been times when I've said to myself, you know better than this. Why are you thinking these thoughts? Why are you doing these things? And what I have seen over the years is that each time I make a mistake, it allows me to be more compassionate towards others when others make a mistake. And I can look at them with more compassion and say, oh, I see that, I've done that. And instead of condemning them for their mistake and calling it a sin, I can say, yeah, I see that I've done that myself. And I see that in me forgiving you, I forgive myself for making that same mistake. So it's almost like you have to go through it to experience it. And Course in Miracles says that. That's why the lessons are experiential. And that's why they have you practice the lessons every day, so that it's not just words that you're repeating or memorizing. It's actually an experience that you're having. And it's through the experience that the change is made. It's through the experience that you're able to embody the lessons. Does that make sense?
Yes, very much.
So maybe it will help you to have more compassion for yourself by saying, okay, it's a necessary thing for me to experience this thing. It's, I always used to tell I had a couple of interior designers that worked for me when I had my interior design firm. And the first thing I would say to them is, you have to make mistakes. If you don't make a mistake, something's wrong. Like, you have to make a mistake so that you can learn how to do it a more productive way. And it's through our mistakes that we learn. And you have to feel, it's like, you almost have to feel the sting, like, ooh, that hurt. How can I not experience that hurt again? Oh, I can not experience that pain again by choosing love. And it's almost like it makes you more aggressively do the work of choosing love, because you don't want that pain, right? It's like, okay, I need to do this work because I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to experience that anymore. I don't want happiness in my life. So because I want happiness, and I know what it feels like to have the pain of not having happiness.
That was helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's like incentive. And then when you do get those breakthroughs and those aha moments, it's like, wow, that's amazing. I want more of this. So I'm going to continue to practice, especially when you can take a situation where you've had a former enemy and you've seen them in a place where you have, felt that they were guilty, or that they had sinned somehow and deserved punishment. And then when you go through that forgiveness, like the true forgiveness, and you can see them in that mind of God through eyes of Christ and love, and you know them as one with yourself, it's miraculous. I mean, it's nothing less than miraculous. And miracles are natural, right? When they don't happen, something's gone wrong. And it's just a part of just practicing and practicing and practicing the course, and letting go, letting God, calling on the Holy Spirit, choosing love over fear 60,000 times a day, right? So many opportunities every single day. But it's training your mind, right? Training your mind and remembering to train your mind so that you can experience happiness, so you can experience abundance and success within this world of illusions, because you're now in that place of choosing love, choosing love, choosing love again and again and again. Anything else that anyone wants to share, or shall we close and continue next week? All right.
Sounds good.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm back, and see you next week. See you next Monday. Great to have you here. Thank you for sharing, everyone. It's been very helpful.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.